Hello everybody, welcome to my first video of 2019. I filmed all this in November of 2018, and in this video I will explain a little bit about why there's been a big lag in my YouTubing. But anyway, this was shot, like I said, in November. It was All Saints Day. And my mom and I had driven to her hometown, West, Texas, and the name of the town is West. And it's a Czech community, and we went to where my father is buried, and all my mother's family is buried there, and the cemetery is a beautiful perpetual care Catholic cemetery called St. Mary's Cemetery. And I'm a little prejudiced, but I think it's the most beautiful cemetery, I guess, in the world, because it's well maintained, beautiful oak trees. Anyway, part of the fun of this trip was I got to bond with my mom because my sister stayed back in Austin and worked. And so the first thing that I learned was that my mother's mother, Mary, was quite the trendsetter. She was the first woman of her time that wore pants. And at first everybody was a little freaked out about that, but by the time I remember my grandmother, all of her friends wore little pantsuits, so that was pretty cool. The other thing that I learned was that the cemetery had asked the parishioners in the future, when they buried their family, to use flat headstones and not these grandiose, large tomb markers with curbing extended out because it was hard to mow. And my grandmother was one of the first people of her generation to adopt this, and she was really a trendsetter in getting her friends to do it as well. So that was pretty cool to learn, and you will see that the row that my mother's family is buried in, and I will be buried there too because my mother bought us plots, is all flat. And I think they're in a lot of ways more beautiful than the big tombstones. You'll see my great-grandparents have one of the big ones, and those are no longer in style. They're asking people to do the flat markers, and you'll see what those look like. I think they're really pretty. The other thing that I learned was that my great-grandparents, my mother's grandparents, I think my mother said her great-grandmother had died, or her grandmother had died, and their grandfather came to live with them, and he told my mother he would help her paint the house, the outside of the house, if she did all the ladder work, and he would teach her how to paint. I can't remember if my mother said they had a painting store or not, but she helped him paint, and I think they took the house from yellow to white. My mother will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's what she said. And it's kind of cool because my mother taught me how to paint, so that kind of went from generation to generation to generation, and I had not known that. The other thing that was interesting is while we were at the cemetery and I was filming the outside of the fence, a relative walked up, and she was as cute as could be.
And I'm Chochik.
The most interesting part for me was we were filming the landscape behind the cemetery, and there's a stock pond. For those of you who are not from Texas, people dig an area of their land out, and it's where the water naturally pools to, and it becomes a stock pond where rainwater washes to, and it is for watering the livestock. And my mother said, you ought to shoot that so people see it. And there was a little calf there, and he had a really bad hip. And it broke my heart because I don't know the fate of this calf, but most likely he does not get to live a very long life with this broken hip that he had. It looked like it was broken. But he was able to trot along, and why that has got a special place in the heart for me is while this was filmed, my hip really, really hurt. And I was in the process of seeing a surgeon, getting an MRI, all that. Well, long story short, I had to have my hip operated on. I had it done on January 24th. It went really well. I had a thing called an FAI, which is a femoral acetabular impingement, and they go in through two little holes. It's done arthroscopic and takes about an hour and a half, and they clean it all up. They cut out the tear. Anyway, today I go for my 2-week follow-up, and they're going to take out the stitches, so that's pretty cool. So this calf has special meaning to me because I thought it was kind of ironic. The other thing is, since I did my last video, I've gotten a new Mac. I got a MacBook Pro, and I'm using Final Cut, so I'm having to learn that. And so this is my St. Mary's video. Some of the things that I love about St. Mary's is the beautiful trees, but the fence. There's something magical about the fence. There's something magical about where this cemetery is located. You turn off a main road, and main road for west is pretty small, but it runs along some train tracks. And you turn to the left and you go down this beautiful road, and there is used to be right near the cemetery a place where you could buy eggs, and there was a big chicken farm, and it looked like when we were there it is no longer that, but it has a beautiful tower. And so I hope you enjoy this cemetery. When we first come in through the gates, you'll see the row where my mom's family, the Heidesheks, are buried, and that's a beautiful row. You'll see where my grandparents are buried. Have a famous uncle. He was like the first, I think, Czech lawyer in Texas, where he's buried. And then my mother's mother, after my mother was born, my mother's the baby, she had a baby that I think lived 1 day. And what's interesting is you used to have to bury the babies in another part of the cemetery. I don't know the reason for this, maybe because they weren't baptized yet, I don't know. Anyway, for a long time this baby just had this little metal cross marker, but finally my mother's family bought it a beautiful headstone. And my sister and my mom in a previous trip got a pretty vase, and so that we can put flowers there. So this is once again St. Mary's Cemetery in West Texas. It's where my father is buried, and all of my mother's family, the Heidesheks and the Checheks, are buried. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And 2019, here we go. Bye.